All right, guys. Today I talked to Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan. He's a very well-known personality in corporate world in India and beyond. Author of more than dozen books. Very frequently talk about leadership, and it's former director of Tata Sons, one of the biggest group in India. And today we discuss about the rise of Indian CEOs or Indian origin CEOs. Thank you, sir, for giving time.
Well, great pleasure to be with you again.
Sir, Indian CEOs, Indian origin CEOs, to be precise. What do you make out of it? Why there are so many?
That the emergence principle in biology is what seems to be at work. Many people try to find out single biggest driving reasons. That's a left-brain analytical type of thinking. Then the moment you give one such reason or two such reasons, you can give another example saying, but what about China? Or what about some other place? For example, if you said familiarity with the English language, then they say, but what about Pakistan? If you say the size of the population, you say, well, what about China? So obviously, it's a cluster of factors and not a single factor. And the emergence principle in biology, as distinct from the cause and effect principle in physics. In physics, you say, this is the cause, that is the effect. I've linked them through experimentation and proven, The law of gravity is what pulls an object down vertically. That's cause and effect. In biology, it says a number of things must come and happen at the same time. And they take the example, or I am very fascinated with the example of how a butterfly comes out of the larva, or how a baby is born in human reproduction, or how a rose flower comes out of a bud. And if you analyze, it's not a single factor. Some hormone is changing, some muscle is changing, some physiological change is happening, and 4 or 5 or 6 things are happening simultaneously, like an orchestra. Okay. And therefore, it is not a cause and effect, but what in biology or botany they call the emergence principle. And I think what's happening, and the only sensible explanation I can find, and that is also a challengeable or debatable one, is that the emergence principle is at working. What is the emergence principle as applicable to Indian managers becoming good CEOs? Well, the usual culprits are amongst them. Knowledge of English language, large population, number of good education institutions, though there are a hell of a lot more lousy education institutions as well. But there are 3 or 4 which perhaps are not so commonly appreciated. The first is that management education and a culture of professional management started in India long before other emerging markets. I mean, if you go back to the 1930s, Unilever said the single biggest problem in our getting the best out of the Indian market is not having Indian managers. And they recruited Prakash Tandon and then Vasant Rajadeksha, Gopal Hattiagadi. England returned, America returned people, and that led to the management trainee scheme, and that's taken its own course over 50 or 70 years, where now a reverse talent export is happening. So that's one such factor. If you look at a second factor, it is that management education began in India when nobody thought Indian managers of India as managers. As early as 1952, the first Indian Institute of Social Welfare, which is the predecessor of the IIMs, started. And we had a number of institutes. Today we have, I think, 4,000 institutions. Again, 3,920 are probably useless institutions. But the 70 or 80 that produce good managers take very good talent, refresh them further, and produce them. The IIMs are like the IITs. Mm-hmm. So we have a long tradition of Indian managers, and even when I began my career, soon after I began my career, management became a very attractive profession. Like chartered accountancy was 20 years earlier, and law was 40 years earlier. So it attracts the best people. The third thing that I would mention is that Indians have a unique combination of being adaptive, highly adaptive, and highly learning. orientated. What do I mean? Many of us have grown up in middle class families. The joint family system has already started to break down even from my father's generation. I can't say I lived in a joint family, but we were very large families. It is almost like a joint family. We were 6 brothers and sisters, and I don't know about you, but many people have grown up in large families. There was a lot of social interaction with uncles and aunties and family occasions. So, the socialization of the Indians, right from childhood, has been very high. And that requires adaptability because many people come from different points of view. And that's where two cultural factors of Indians, which we are not necessarily conscious of, but which are in operation. The first is what I call healthy skepticism. You don't accept anything. I mean, even the Vedantic literature tells you that question it, don't accept it, think about it yourself. The Lord Buddha said under the Bodhi tree that don't join my group just because I'm telling you. Debate it, and all this tarka vitarka goes back to all the philosophical debates that we are all aware of. So the challenge of reigning ideas, and some accepted and some didn't accept it. So you'll always find a positive charge and a negative charge operating in the adoption of, and that's why revivalism keeps happening periodically with religions, Jains and Buddhists, Hinduism, Hindu revivalism, Vaishnavite, Saivite. So that is the first thing. Social family conditions and the intellectual tradition cause high degree of adaptability. This also manifests itself in linguistic diversity because I don't know about you, but I speak Tamil at home. I speak Hindi because that I had to learn it in school. I speak English because that is the way forward. I speak Bengali because I'm born and raised in Calcutta. And I speak a smattering of Marathi and Gujarati and Punjabi. And I'm not a particularly talented guy, linguist, I'm not a Narasimha Rao or something. But likewise, my wife speaks Marathi, Gujarati, Telugu, Tamil, Between us, we probably cover everything other than Kashmiri and Manipuri, So, and we are not unusual. There are people who learn more than one language here. It's another indication of adaptability. You look at Europe, it's very difficult for one to learn another language. You look at East Asia, it's very difficult for them to learn another language. And we are always giving concessions, which is fair enough. I'm not arguing against it or for it. But the Indians' ability to adapt and learn is also very high. So having healthy skepticism and high adaptability simultaneously is a very rare combination that you can find. Very rare. And that is what causes, these are some of the factors that come into that emergence principle. Almost every person whom you can identify as having risen in these corporate levels as a CEO shows that many of these characteristics. That's why we called it a made in India manager. Now, Rishi Sunak is not a made in India manager. He may have somebody celebrates Hindu values, somebody celebrates something else, but he's a Britisher, frankly. To call him a made in India manager is like going to some guy off Orchard Street in Singapore and finding a Tamil who has gone away 150 years ago and saying he was
I think it's very different. I think his grandparents probably were in Gunjrawala, which is now in Pakistan, and then I think it's a long tradition. But he's a Hindu and a British. That's how I look at it, sir.
So I think the made in India manager shows healthy skepticism, adaptability, eloquence in articulation. I shouldn't say eloquence, articulation, because one could argue whether that is eloquent. We are a noisy bunch. We don't mind, unlike East Asians who are very disciplined and quiet. So, whereas all these show that there is creativity along with discipline. But there's very few places in the world which are not creative and disciplined. Say China, for example. You can't say they're not disciplined, but you can't say they are not creative. They wouldn't have created Tencent and Alibaba's if you argue that they are not creative. But the emulsion is different. I don't know if you're familiar with emulsion chemistry. If you take oil and emulsify it with water, it can come in two formats. One is the outer layer is oil, butter, and the inner layer is water. That is called butter. When the outer layer is water and the inner layer is butter, you get margarine. So margarine and butter are the same thing, same ingredients, but the emulsions are different. And that's what India and China are. China is discipline outside, creativity inside. India is creativity outside, discipline inside.
Yeah. I think it's amazing. Look, I was not hoping that there is so much of depth in it. I went through Made in India Manager briefly, but this seems like the real science behind it somewhere.
I don't know if there's
Uh,
a science, but these are my observations.
so that's amazing. Now, a couple of things I want to ask you, just picking on this conversation, sir. Healthy skepticism. Now, how does that translate into success in corporate world?
Because if you have people who are, see, we are all deferential to authority,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're in India or in China or in Japan. Yeah, I mean, it's an Asian thing. Far more than, say, the Dutch, just to take one example. But culturally, Indians question. They may not articulate their doubt or skepticism, and sometimes they may behave a bit counter-culturally. After all, there are many, many people in the world. I'll give you one example, which is held out in great pride, but not for healthy skepticism, but for something else. In the Ramayana, when Hanuman is caught and brought into the court of Ravan, you may remember that everybody is saying, kill the guy because he has damaged our city. And Ravan's eyes are rolling and he is inclined to accept. When only one person speaks up, Vibhishan. And Vibhishan said, under corporate governance, article 123, subsection 3, doodh ko kabhi, you don't kill the doodh ko, you can punish him.
Mm-hmm.
And as you remember, Hanuman was punished but not killed.
Mm,
Otherwise, yeah, exactly. So Indians are very good at, or I shouldn't say they're very good, compared to Asians, other East Asians, they are quite good at expressing a different point of view. Sometimes they do it elegantly, like Vibhishan did. Sometimes they don't express it at all. Sometimes they express it in a convoluted way. So I think it matters a lot that they have healthy skepticism, because healthy skepticism causes you to experiment to find out alternatives. If I think democracy is bad, what else can work? So you see the number of political parties we have. We have a record in the world, probably. Yeah, I don't know, you have 1,000 political parties or 500 or whatever number of them. Because everybody has a... एक राग होता है ना, थोड़े से फर्क पे वो राग changes completely. Yeah. So this comes out of experimentation. Experimentation comes out of healthy skepticism.
Yeah. Now, I think, and I relate to it because, and this is personal. When I'm on a call, I'm the one asking most questions, and I'm not trying to take any credit for it. But I cannot keep quiet. And similarly, when in market research, that we have these focus groups and all that, right? Showing a product. You put 3 Indians inside, its group is hijacked. They will speak most. They will ask most questions. General engagement level is higher compared to others. So I kind of I'm able to kind of place the healthy skepticism in my context also. Whether I say it in a healthy way or no, that's a different thing.
Sure.
Yeah. Now, adaptability. What is that like? I was hearing, let's say, for example, a Unilever manager in India, being going to distribution site in, let's say, Sikkim or Gangtok, or going to Punjab and then going to somewhere. Is that something what you're trying to say?
No, adaptability means that not only when you are confronted with what is countercultural from your point of view, you don't react by rejecting it, but you react by adapting to it. So, if I am born in Calcutta, as it so happens, my Vatavaran at home was learn Hindi also, learn Bengali also. I learned 5 languages in school. Tamil at home, Bengali in the school, Hindi in the school, English, of course, in the school. My mother sent me to Sanskrit classes and to German classes. That is a hell of an overload. Now, today you can tell a mother, get your child to learn 6 languages. But it was par for the course. I'm giving that as an example. I'm not saying everybody who's my age group has learned 6 languages.
Yeah.
There are different kinds of adaptability. And when I go to Punjab or UP, I am very readily able to adapt to their way of thinking and working. When I was posted in the UK, just as an example, I found that it is counterproductive to interrupt other people. But that was my natural style. Because in India, five guys will interrupt each other. You just got to watch an Indian television program to know. There's nothing called, it's not like a BBC interview, it's a shouting match. We conduct our meetings also that way.
Yeah, they're
Variations
not.
of, they're not very organized. When an Indian meeting, even a business meeting ends, there is nobody who's summarizing that this is what we have agreed upon. Very often, there are exceptions. When I went to the UK, I found there was an agenda. There were point number 1, 2, 3. Whoever is chairing the meeting would not accept point number 4 or 5. He said, we leave that over for the next meeting. He would literally cast his eyes around the table. Everybody would get a chance to speak. At the end, he would summarize. Now, I found that to be something that I had to adapt to and that they would not adapt to me. Likewise, when I went to Saudi Arabia as the chairman of Unilever Arabia, I had 16 different nationalities. Many of them were from Unilever. So I said, there's a Unilever way of doing things. And for me, or it was my assumption, that the Unilever characteristic of managing and business behavior would dominate. But that was not so. The guy from Sweden would say, yeah, but in Unilever Sweden, we don't do it this way, we do it that way. The guy from Unilever Netherlands would say, yeah, but that's all rubbish. This is the way, Netherlands is where Unilever started. And so on and so forth. We had a Frenchman who would be very argumentative, though very competent. And of course, you had the Indians who never stopped talking. Not to forget undercurrents of a Pakistani person of Pakistani origin. We thought all Arabs are the same, but they're not the same. A Moroccan is very different from a Syrian or a Lebanese. So I have actually written an article on that also as to how multiple, I even attended a course in INSEAD to understand how do you get the best sort of cultural diversity when you're running an organization. And that's what I mean by saying adaptability.
Okay.
And
Amazing.
I imposed adaptability not only on myself, but I think everybody else was also encouraged to become adapted to this new way of working.
But you don't kind of rule out the thing of the population and the lack of opportunities in our own country, which is pushing
No,
these.
those are also factors, but I don't think they're very big factors. I mean, there's a large population in Nigeria. There's lack of opportunity in Nigeria. You see, each such combination can be countered with another counter example. But if I say there are 7 or 8 factors that come together,
Yeah.
you will not find a single other example, including Pakistan and Bangladesh. Why did cricket become so big in India? Because गली गली में cricket होता है. गली गली में tennis नहीं होता है. Right? गली गली में cricket होता है. So there are multiple forms of cricket, and it's taken 50 years of evolution for people from small towns, small villages, people who are not well endowed with equipment to become world-class cricketers. And the same thing is happening in management. It's a combination of factors.
I think I agree with you, and it makes a lot of sense. Now, is this trend going to continue? Because you see, India is changing now. There are things changing in India. It's I mean, I'll go to the management schools and I'll look at the rankings, and there are no Indian schools in the top. Maybe that the reasons are different. Those reasons are different. But is it going to continue like that, or?
Well, I can't tell whether it's going to continue. It's very difficult to predict. But cultural change happens very slowly. Culture determines behavior. Behavior determines action. So there's a sequence: culture, behavior, action. And so Indians are not going to become less talkative all of a sudden. For example, Indians are not going to give up healthy skepticism all of a sudden. Right? I suspect some of these genes stay in them even when they become NRIs. But after 2-3 generations, I don't know which way it will turn out. For example, if I close my eyes and listen to some people, Kamala Harris, you can't say that she's an Indian. except in his.
She's a pathetic speaker.
And you hear the word Kamala and you assume it's a speaker. You open your eyes and her color is not dissimilar, but the rest of it is totally different. So I can't tell how long it will continue, but I think some of these inbuilt things of being argumentative, of having healthy skepticism, of having high adaptability. And you see, you already start seeing things changing. When I look at my NRI cousins or nephews and nieces, they come to India for a short holiday. They say, "Yahan kuch chalta nahi hai, ye nahi hota hai, wo nahi hota hai." They become less adaptable. So maybe after one or two generations, it may change. But those who are made in India, it's going to take a long time to change. These strengths and with this combination will increase. And we are not talking of the NRIs or people who went away 100 years ago. If you go to V.S. Naipaul's family or somebody who became president of Fiji, or somebody who's become the Prime Minister of Ireland because he's half Maharashtrian. Those are not the examples to take. Indeed, I would say even Rishi Sunak is almost at the edge of this periphery, though everybody's gone gaga over here. I think it's the act of growing up in India and being a product of this cauldron that we have. An Indian learns very soon to face obstacles, overcome them, and come out successful. बर्थ सर्टिफिकेट नहीं मिलता है, स्कूल में एडमिशन नहीं मिलता है, स्कूल जाने को बस नहीं मिलता है, पढ़ाई करो तो कॉलेज का एडमिशन नहीं मिलता है. Getting into IIT is tougher than getting into Princeton or Harvard.
Harvard, yeah, true.
So these attitude, what is management? Management is about facing obstacles, finding out multiple ways to overcome it, and then going ahead and implementing. Indians do this all the time. All the time. I'll give you one small example, which is a very petty example, but I think it makes my point. I have seen Americans or Britishers making a PowerPoint presentation in the days when we used to have power cuts. And if the overhead projector went off because of the power cut, everything would stop for half an hour, hoping that the power would come back. When an Indian is making a presentation, he will pull out his cell phone or something or a torch and say, "I knew this would happen, but I'll speak without my charts." And he'll carry on speaking. He doesn't want to lose market share in the available space and time. That's adaptability. Many people can't speak without the chart. Their tongue is tied.
Well, I face it almost every day in my job.
Yeah.
So,
but you don't have power cuts in Singapore.
No, not about power cuts. I mean, there are people in the job which can't work without PowerPoint.
Right.
Which can't work. And I don't, personally, I think I'm not a PowerPoint slave. But there are a lot of people who want to see the information organized in a certain way before even thinking.
But, I don't want to give the impression everything is right about Indians. I don't want to give that. For example,
that's what I'm coming to. That's what I'm coming to. What are the pitfalls? Where are the problems?
We are very long-winded people. What you can say with some precision in a few words, we will take a lot of time to explain. Why? I don't know. I think it's cultural. The cultural being, you look at our Ramayana and Mahabharata, they are 4 times as long as the Iliad and the Odyssey put together. You look at Ponniyin Selvan, which is a new film that has come, PS1. It is in 5 volumes. It's 1,400 pages in Tamil. So we are very long-winded people. So people will say, "Can I make a point?" And then they'll take over. And you see this in group discussions. I'm sure you have experience.
As I told you that about focus groups, they take it over.
They take it over. And they'll speak for 10 minutes saying, "Loud." In the TV, you'll find this every day. "Can I just get 30 seconds?" And he'll speak for 30 minutes, until he's told to shut up. The second thing is we are, in many Indian languages, it becomes very flowery. And therefore, to express yourself well, you can use lots of nice words. People become very long-winded for linguistic reasons, apart from cultural reasons. We have indiscipline as our outer layer and creativity as our inner layer. Most people assume that Indians are indisciplined. In a sense, we are. Compared to East Asians, we are definitely indisciplined. But it's not that we lack creativity. We are very good at See, there's no word for innovation in an Indian language. You think of it, in Tamil, you'll say Pudumai. That is Naiji, Navintam,
Hmm.
Nyutam. But
Hmm.
it's not quite the same as what the English word innovation means. So we are very good at looking for new problems to solve, but we are not good at scaling up solutions to new problems. So we will have awards for innovation, then they will not see the light of day and become scalable to world class. So if you see, why do we not have a Tencent or a Alibaba? So we are like some of the jungle animals, like cheetah, can develop very high power, chase a prey for a short time, and if the prey runs faster, they give up. There are some others who can run for a very long time because they have stamina. We are very good at generating high, like a racing car, develop high horsepower, but थोड़ी देर चलता है फिर बैटरी खत्म.
And another thing I've personally noticed, sir, is time management.
Yeah,
Time management, I've found most of the.
absolutely, absolutely. That's another weak point because for us, time is relative. It is not the clock time,
Yeah.
And our own philosophies say, what is समय क्या है, वक्त क्या है, वक्त. So we'll say, I'll come to your house at around 8. Nobody will say, I'll come at 8. आप हमारे घर खाना खाने आइए, 8ish.
It's Indian time.
Indian time.
Yeah.
So you're quite right. We don't understand the precision. For us, time is infinite. It is not 24 hours. It's a
Yeah.
cultural factor I'm talking about.
Yeah. And I think I personally, my time management is also not very good, and I've kind of zeroed in on the concept of energy management rather than time management. And then the time becomes a secondary variable within the energy rather than the clock time. But I've seen some of the Westerns being very, very good with time management. Even Singapore, Japanese, you've heard of, sir. Now another thing which I find wrong with them is the working culture. Sometimes it's like a boss, and the subordinate becomes a very servant, and that kind of relationship, which also is a bit toxic.
Yeah, it's again the product of a hierarchical caste system which has existed for a long time. So you tend to treat your subordinates as though you're the Nawab and they are the Ghulam. Tomorrow, when you meet your boss, you become the Ghulam and the other person becomes the Nawab.
Yeah,
You're
that's
quite
that's
right. We got a
that's
hierarchy, sense of hierarchy, which
that's a problem. Now, so many Indian CEOs, sir, but entrepreneurs, I think, are slightly on the lower side, right? Isn't it? Is that something you think? Agree with me on that?
no, I think it's a product of evolution because the kind of entrepreneurs that firstly, entrepreneurship is hardly 25 years old in India. I'm not even sure it's 25 years, it's probably 20 years. Entrepreneurship has happened because we were always a capital short country. And so security of job and carrying on in a large company was always a safer option, even when I started my career, let alone now. But with the private equity and venture capital and foreign capital coming, risk taking has improved with the next generation, my children's generation. But this entrepreneurship also has a number of variants. They can be hurry up and get rich quickly, build up, don't worry about scaling up to maturity, cash out. We are in that phase now. Then gradually people will say, yeah, I'm doing something for my children. The way G.D. Birla built up his business or Jamshedji Tata built up his business, it was 100 saal chalna hai. That attitude doesn't come into a startup environment. But it will come when you see a few companies like the tech companies, the services companies, TCS, Infosys, Wipro, HCL, Mahindra Tech, they have done that with software services. But software products haven't done that. Today, everybody is chasing valuation.
Yeah,
And
that's a big thing.
that's a big thing because when when you've been very deprived of money and you say, yeah, he's got 5,000 crores in the bank or 50,000 crores in the bank, Adani wants to become the biggest in the world. Okay, very quickly. That's a different motivation. So I think there are different strokes for different kinds of people. But in my view, with the current drying up of entrepreneurship capital, people will look at scalability and sustainability. And that's why I did a piece of research on what makes long-term sustainable companies. And I'm doing a lot of prachar of that to startups and everybody, hoping that maybe some other will stick.
Yeah. So I think I have a couple of questions, and then before winding it up, and the way you approach the subject in the beginning, that itself was like a very heavy weight and answered a lot of my questions. Now, on a couple of other questions which I have are slightly different. I'll just move away from. Before I move away from this, let me ask you the questions. You worked, sir, Arabia, India, everywhere. You write, you travel. Western managers versus Indian managers. Where do you think the Western managers are superior to Indian managers? You have a view on that?
Western managers are far better listeners. Okay. Indians are far better speakers. You can decide which is better or worse. That depends on the situation. I think Western managers are far more thoughtful.
In what way?
They will listen and they will not react immediately. Indian managers will react and produce another idea instead. They are very much more creative because of this healthy skepticism, whatever. Western managers think, listen, think, and articulate in the same language. Indian managers, of course, it varies a lot. Some of them listen, they think in some other language, do a translation, and come back and articulate in some other language. So they may come out long-winded. Indian managers are not great at time management. Western managers are great at time management. For Indian managers, success at work is the principal driver of his life. Not for a Western manager. It's a way of earning a living. And I've seen many Western managers who say, Unilever mein nahi chala. So I'll make furniture or, I'll paint. It is not a do or die matter. His career and his progress in his job is not a matter of life and death. For an Indian manager, it's a matter of quote unquote life and death. Because his wife will ask him, uski gaadi tumhare gaadi se bada kyun hai?
And it works both ways. It helps climbing the ladder, but at the same time, it creates a bit of a toxic environment. Question this: my children are born in Singapore. Now, this is more as a parent, I'm asking you. Now, and sometimes my wife talks to me. Should we take them to India to study? They'll become more street smart. Because of the jugaadbaji. Now, you have any advice on how to compensate for that while living in Singapore? I mean, I'm just asking this hypothetical question on behalf of many NRIs or whatever.
It's a question I don't have an answer for. There is no doubt at all in my mind that if your children came, but you put them into a boarding school in Doon school, it will not serve your purpose. Because that's a cloistered environment where it may be better than going to a public school in England. But getting grandparents over is a help.
Okay.
I find having a lot of time with grandparents and grandparents who spend time with the children, not they are reading the newspaper and the children are doing their own iPad, is a great help. Frequent visits back to home is good. As an input, you cannot do everything perfect for your child. Every parent would love to, but it doesn't work that way. But don't take them out of a nice, good school and put them into some municipal school here, hoping that will help them. That's not a good idea. I won't do it.
Okay, I get it. Now, on that note, Adin, thank you very much, Gopal. I really appreciate your time, and it's a delight. आपने इतना time दिया मेरे लिए बहुत बड़ी बात. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All the best. Bye.
Bye.